On today's show, Egor Demin and Drake Powell nearly lift the Nets to a win over the Pelicans, but an improbable shot saves New Orleans in the final minutes. I'll offer my top takeaways from a loss that could have significant draft lottery implications down the line on today's episode of Locked On Nets.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Nets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I'm Erik Slater, Brooklyn Nets beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. Thank you for making me your first listen of the day. The show is 100% free on all those great platforms. And on today's episode, I'm going to be recapping Brooklyn's 116-113 loss to the New Orleans Pelicans on Wednesday at Smoothie King Center. And this was a wild finish in a game that has pretty significant implications for the draft lottery race. The Nets were up by 12. Then the Pelicans stormed back late. Egor Demin steps up and hits another huge shot, a go-ahead three with 1:28 left to put the Nets up 3. And then the Nets have a really good defensive possession. It looks like they're going to get a stop and come much closer to sealing a win. But Saddiq Bey hits a prayer 3 from a different zip code as the shot clock expires, fading away to tie the game up, and then the Nets end up losing. And if you're a Nets fan who's rooting for them to win and you don't believe in the tank, you're probably pulling your hair out. And if you're a fan who's rooting for the tank, you're probably overjoyed. But the basketball gods, at least in terms of the draft lottery odds in the tank race, maybe they're finally looking out for the Nets, because this is now 2 losses. 2 losses in the last week or two, where the other team has hit an improbable shot in the game's biggest moments. I mean, you had the Paolo Banchero bank shot to win that Magic game, and you now have a Saddiq Bey 3 that if you were watching this game, you were probably just like, oh my God, I cannot believe that shot went in. So that's now 2 games where the Nets played pretty well. The rookies played well. I'm going to get into that in a second. But they played well. The rookies played well. I don't know how great the Nets played in this game, but they were in position to win. And then a prayer shot just comes out of nowhere, and, they end up losing. So, that is might be frustrating. That might be good, for some fans, depending on how you're rooting and what you want the Nets to do this season. But with this, I don't think there's any debate that, a loss like this is at least good for the Nets in terms of the draft lottery standings, because with this loss, the Nets now only have 1 more win. They have 11 wins, and the Pelicans, Kings, and Wizards only have 10 wins. So the Nets only 1 win ahead of the teams in the 2, 3, and 4 spots in the draft lottery standings. And I think right now, as I'm recording this, the Kings, they were up 15 at, I think, halftime against the Knicks. So if they win, they'll be tied with the Nets. So the Nets are making up a lot of ground, and they're putting themselves in a position after that 7-3 stretch. They're putting themselves in a position to have a really good shot at getting back into the conversation, or getting back into. They're already in the conversation for top 3 lottery odds. And it's not like these losses that they've had as of late. I mean, this game, you have the Mavericks game, you have the loss in Memphis, or Memphis stormed back late. Like, these are all competitive losses. Like, they're not getting embarrassed. They're not getting blown out. They were actually winning down the stretch of a lot of these games. And while, it's not great to see a team with a lot of young players just kind of collapsing down the stretch of games, I don't think you can call this one tonight a collapse, but it's good, in the sense of obviously the lottery odds. And even though, this was a loss that came in heartbreaking fashion, which I'm sure is still frustrating for some fans, there were positives to take from this game, and it starts with the rookies. And it starts with Egor Demin and Drake Powell, who started alongside each other for the first time this season. Drake Powell started over Terrence Mann in this game in the backcourt alongside Egor. And those two, they were the best rookies on the court tonight in a game that also featured Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears. Egor and Drake really showed out. And starting with Egor, Egor has 17 points on 6 of 10 shooting from the field and 5 of 9 from 3, 5 assists and 1 turnover. Just another really solid performance. And this is becoming, kind of commonplace. Like, yes, Egor will have some games where he struggles, but he's had a lot of games during this recent like 10, 11, 12 game stretch where he's just doing this. He's putting up like 14, 15, 16, 17 points, good efficiency, taking care of the ball, playing good defense. And that really has been the recipe for Egor. Like you look at it, and I don't think it's not questionable. Like if you look at the numbers, he's an impact player for the Nets this season. The Nets are 7.5 points better per 100 possessions with Egor on the court compared to him off. That is the best mark in the NBA among 20 rookies to play over 500 minutes this season. That's from Cleaning the Glass, which filters out garbage time. So Egor has been one of the most important and impactful rookies in the league this year in regards to his team's ability to compete. And how is he doing that? It's really the things that I just said. I mean, there's like the three things that Egor is really doing well up to this point. The three-point shooting, he's shooting like a really good, if not elite, three-point shooter as a starter. He's near 40% on like 12 three-point attempts per 100 possessions. So you have that. You have the decision-making. He's taking care of the ball. He's not making like the craziest passes. He doesn't have the craziest assist numbers, but his assist-to-turnover ratio is very solid. And then the defense, like he has that 6'9" frame. He has that 6'10" wingspan, and that is enough to bother opposing offenses, close passing lanes, shrink shooting windows. So you have all that. You have the shooting, you have the decision-making, you have the defense, and that is a recipe for an impactful player. And that's probably what, obviously the Nets saw with Egor in the draft. Once they were confident that he was going to be able to shoot like this, they probably saw him and they said, look, we have this guy who's 6'9". He has some ball handling ability at that size. We know that he has great vision and great passing ability if you can unlock it. And if you have that alongside good three-point shooting and a solid frame to play defense, that's the making of an impactful player. And that's not even talking about the clutch shot making, man. I mean, Egor just continues to do it in this game. As I said, he hits another go-ahead three in the clutch. In the final minutes, he drained a pull-up three with the game tied to put the Nets up three with 1:20 remaining. And you want to hear something crazy about Egor? Listen to this stat. Egor, I pulled this from StatHead. Egor is 11 of 15. That's 73% from three in the final 10 minutes of games within 5 points this season. That is the second highest three-point percentage in NBA history among players with at least 10 attempts in such situations. So that's obviously crazy. Only Malcolm Brogdon is better. I went on StatHead and did some tinkering to find that. Obviously, it's a small sample size, but still a pretty wild stat. And like, it's a small sample size for sure, but I think when Egor at this point, I said 11 of 15 from three in the final 10 minutes of games within 5 points. And, he's just doing this. Like, he's hit clutch shots in so many games this season. Like, I don't know if you can just say he's like on a heater in the clutch. At a certain point, you just got to say, like, this is who he is. And you see it. Like, he wants to take those shots. Like, Egor hit the go-ahead three, I said, with 1:28 remaining to put the Nets up three. And then he came back down after Saddiq Bey hit that three to tie it. And he took another pull-up three on the next possession. So he wants to hit those shots. Like, he's clearly craving those moments, and he's been able to excel in that. And for a player that has all of the other intangibles that I talked about, earlier in this segment, to also have kind of that fearlessness, at least as a three-point shooter in the clutch, really positive sign. And I think that Nets fans should be really happy with what they're seeing from Egor. And Egor, a lot of fans leading up to this have been clamoring for Egor to finally get some minutes alongside Drake, because those are two guys that haven't played a ton together this season, because Egor has been running with a starting unit and Drake has been running with the bench. And Drake has even had his minutes limited in some recent games, but they finally get to start alongside one another. And it was fun to watch, man. I mean, Drake in this game, he had a really efficient showing. He had 16 points on 6 of 10 from the field and 2 of 5 from three, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 0 turnovers. He was a +5 on the night. That was a team high. And I just really liked what we saw from Drake in this one. And honestly, it was a breath of fresh air. We've seen Drake have some good moments, but he's been really quiet in a lot of recent games, especially with Cam Thomas coming back in the lineup and him running alongside Cam in that second unit with Nolan and some other guys. Like, he hadn't been doing that much. And tonight, he had one good game before this. And then tonight, he's just doing a lot more things. Like, the shot creation was really there. He had some possessions in this game that were really impressive. Like, he had one in the first half where he got the ball in the right wing, and Zion Williamson is covering him, who is one of the more intimidating and obviously physically imposing players that you're going to play against. And Drake got him in an isolation on the right wing. He hit him with like kind of a hesitation near the 3-point line. He drove baseline to his right, and he finished with like an up and under reverse over Zion. So that was really cool to see. the mid-range shooting, like Drake kind of continues to be automatic from the mid-range. I mean, from jumpers like all over the floor. I mean, this season he's shooting, I checked it on Synergy after this game, he's shooting around 50% on jump shots this season. He's shooting really well from the mid-range. So that's a positive to see. Like that drive I just talked about on Zion, his ability to kind of probe into the mid-range, hit some tough contested mid-range jumpers. It bodes well for a player who obviously there were huge questions about what he could do from a shot creation standpoint, because he posted literally the lowest usage rate in NBA history among a wing to be drafted last season at North Carolina. So that secondary shot creation has been nice to see. The three-point shooting has been, solid as it was at North Carolina. We saw him get out in transition and have, a nice finish in transition, which is one of Drake's best skills, but he hasn't been able to do it that much this season because the Nets never play in transition. So I think, a game like tonight, really encouraging performance from Drake. And you got to ask, like, is this a sign of things to come in regard to the starting lineup? Because Terrence was active tonight and he did play. And yet Drake started this game and he finished it. He closed the game over Terrence. And, Terrence has been the starter for most of the season. The Nets have had some success with him in the starting lineup, but we always knew that the Nets were going to try to scale up the rookie minutes as the season progressed. And if you can have Terrence come off the bench in a game like this, you can have Drake close over Terrence in a game like this. I'm not sure why Drake can't continue to start alongside Egor Demin, especially if he's playing well, he doesn't look bad out there, and they're showing chemistry alongside one another. Like, Terrence is a veteran. I think he's a good presence for the rest of the guys, but he seems like a guy who's not going to make a big fuss about it if he's not starting. And if the Nets are playing well and it's not glaringly evident that Drake is hurting the team as compared to Terrence, I think a guy like Drake should be starting. So that was nice to see. And as I said, Egor Demin and Drake Powell, best rookies on the floor tonight. And, this was a game that Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen, two players who the Nets did not select. They missed out on Fears and they passed on Queen. Those guys did not look good tonight at all. They looked really bad. I mean, they were 3 of 18 from the field combined tonight. And some Nets fans have been mad about the Nets passing on Queen and missing out on Fears. And that's understandable given some of the games that both of them have had this season. I think that they both can be solid NBA players, but I'm not a huge fan of those guys' archetypes. Like, you look at it, and Fears is an undersized guard who is not a plus defender. He's not a good three-point shooter, at least for now. That archetype doesn't have a good track record in recent NBA draft history. And then you look at Queen, he's a grounded big man, like a tweener big man who's also not a three-point shooter. I think both of those guys are superbly talented, and I think they can be good if the right skills pop. But you look at a guy like Egor, who also has, he has this size, he has this three-point shooting, he has this passing ability that you can try to unlock. Like, you're very confident that a lot of those skills are going to play at the NBA level. So I think the Nets fans should be feeling pretty good about what they've seen from Egor Demin thus far. And then also, Drake Powell comes in and they both play really well in a game that the Nets end up losing in kind of heartbreaking fashion to a team that they're competing against in the draft lottery standings in the tank race. So that is a pretty good night, at least in my book. But we also had some other notable performances in this one. Michael Porter Jr., I do not think that this is one of his better games, and that's probably why the Nets were not able to come away with a win this one. And then Cam Thomas had some ups, had some downs, but ultimately got benched down the stretch again in this one by Jordi Fernandez. So what did I see from those two? What should fans be looking for from them moving forward? I'll get into all that when I continue Locked On Nets after a quick break.
I carry a lot of responsibility in my household. If something happened to me, there would be serious consequences. We have a mortgage. We got tuition. We got everyday bills. Those aren't going anywhere if something happens to me. And I know that's an overwhelming feeling, but I'm taking steps to protect my family by getting life insurance through Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast, easy, and 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. And as of March 2025, Business Insider named Ethos the #1 no medical exam instant life insurance provider. Ethos has 4.8 out of 5 stars on Trustpilot with over 3,000 reviews. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/LockedOnNBA. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get your free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/LockedOnNBA. That's ethos.com/LockedOnNBA. 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 Application times and rates may vary.
All right, coming back from the break, continuing today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about Brooklyn's last-second loss to the Pelicans down in New Orleans. And this is a game where Michael Porter Jr. didn't have one of his better games. I wouldn't say he was like terrible, but it was definitely one of his lower-end performances of the season. And that is a big reason why the Nets were not able to come away with a win tonight against a Pelicans team that did not play very well in this game either. I mean, like, you look at it, I said, like, the rookies, Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen, were terrible. Zion Williamson had a really efficient game. And then Trey Murphy had, some really electrifying stretches. And that was really the only reason that the Pelicans were able to come away with this win. But that was the bottom line, was, Trey Murphy, frankly, outplayed Michael Porter Jr. for most of this game. And then Zion Williamson had some really good stretches. But you look at MPJ in this game, he had 20 points, 7 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 turnovers, 7 of 20 from the field, and 4 of 12 from 3. And I just thought that this was one of MPJ's not as good games in terms of offensive process. Like, it's always a thing you got to say about MPJ. Like, he's a tough shot maker. He's been taking a lot of tough, ridiculous shots all season. He's made a lot of them. That's what's made it so impressive. But tonight, I would say that he took a lot of really tough shots. I think that the looks were a little bit harder than in some other games. And I don't think, like, the playmaking, the overall impact, it wasn't there. As I said, he had 1 assist, 2 turnovers, 7 of 20 from the field, 4 of 12 from 3. I just think that he was taking a lot of tough looks, and they didn't go down. And look, like, that's kind of how you're going with MPJ this season. Like, I think that he makes some tough shots sometimes, and that's what makes him such a great player for this Nets team a lot of the time. But I didn't feel like he had the same kind of impact tonight that he has in other games. And, like, overall, it's just, that's how it's going to go for MPJ sometimes. Like, down the stretch of this game, the Nets were struggling to find offense. Cam Thomas was not in the game, but MPJ, like, isn't that traditional on-ball shot creator. Like, he's obviously more of the off-ball guy. He does some of those things, and that's why you're seeing down the stretch some of these recent games, like that Memphis game, like the Dallas game, like now this loss to the Pelicans. Like, down the stretch, the Nets sometimes are going to struggle to create offense, because when everything slows down, some of those off-ball actions, some of the things get a little bit phased out because teams are switching everything. It's going to be a little bit harder for MPJ to create shots. So while he's been incredible this season, he's kept the Nets in a lot of games. He's been the biggest reason why the Nets have had this ability to compete. There's going to be some nights where those really tough shots aren't falling, and that's going to keep some other teams that might be inferior to the Nets in games, or it might lead to some other teams who are better than them running away with it. And that's what we saw tonight, and the Nets were not able to generate offense down the stretch of the game. I mean, it is just one performance from MPJ, obviously not a big deal. But then you talk about the Nets not being able to generate offense down the stretch of that game, and Cam Thomas was on the bench in this one. And this was a kind of a really up and down Cam Thomas performance. He had 16 points, 1 rebound, 5 assists, 1 turnover. He was 6 of 15 from the field. And I do think that Cam did some good things in the beginning of this game. Like, he was struggling from the field early in this game, but I thought that he was more proactive as a passer during the first half of this game. He had some really nice looks. He had one really nice pass to Danny Wolf on kind of like a bullet feed down low off of a defensive rotation that I thought was one of Cam's better anticipatory passes that I've seen from him. So it was nice to see him kind of being more proactive as a passer, having some good looks, not turning the ball over early in the game. But as the game progresses, like, the shot selection is just brutal. And it seems like this is kind of how it goes with Cam a lot of the time. Like, he starts games, he's trying to do a little bit more things to fit in. He's trying to play a little bit more within the offense with that second unit. But then as the game progresses, it kind of reverts to like Cam hero ball, and he starts to pound the ball. He starts to take, some really hard shots. I think he took hard shots, the whole length of the game in this one. And sure, like, he can hit some tough shots. Like, he is a tough shot maker, like Michael Porter Jr. He hit really 2 really tough contested threes on the last 2 possessions of the third quarter of this game to give the Nets the lead. But even though Cam can hit those tough shots, it just seems like fool's gold to me. Like, that's just how I view it, because in my opinion, he doesn't hit enough of those tough shots to justify the amount that he takes and how he stalls some of the possessions when he's on the court and when he just starts pounding the ball into the ground. And some of these other guys don't get looks. And you look at it, like, even though he did some good things in this game, he was 6 of 15 from the field, and he was a -8 in 24 minutes. That was the worst plus-minus on the team tonight. And, honestly, I talked about Drake Powell's performance, and, like, the best part about Drake starting today was that he didn't play with Cam much, if at all. Like Terrence got those minutes alongside Cam. And with that, Drake got a lot more on-ball opportunities. So it's just like with Cam Thomas at this point, I think that it's pretty evident that like while he can hit some of these tough shots, he's undoubtedly the Nets like most talented on-ball one-on-one shot creator. The process is just like not good in my opinion. The shot selection is really bad. We obviously know like the defense is what it is. Like it just hasn't been good. I think all of those things, it's not making for Cam to be impactful in his minutes. And sure, like he's running with second units. It could be a little bit harder for him, but he's also playing against second units. And then you look at it like Jordy didn't close with Cam in this one. And I said that, and that's despite the Nets having a glaring need for shot creation down the stretch of these games. So Cam not closing this game, that's very, very telling for me. Like I've already said and been pretty clear that I think that we're nearing the end of the road with Cam. I don't think that's even really debatable at this point. But Jordy not closing with Cam in multiple games now. Like this is the Grizzlies game and in this game, he's not closing with Cam. I think the reason for that is in both of those games down the stretch in the third into the fourth quarter, Cam's shot selection was frankly terrible. But even despite that, there is a solid argument for Cam to be playing, or at least for the Nets to go offense, defense down the stretch of these games in the closing situations. Because as I said, with Michael Porter Jr., the Nets don't have that on-ball creator, and they're struggling to generate offense down the stretch of these games outside of maybe Egor Demin hitting some really tough pull-up threes. And yet, Jordy doesn't want to close with Cam Thomas. And I think that, part of that is obviously how he's playing, how the process that Cam is playing with. And I think part of that is like a game like tonight, Drake Powell gets those closing minutes. I didn't even say it, but like the Nets were down 4 in like the final 14 seconds left. Like the Pelicans hit 2 free throws to go up 4 with like 15 seconds left. And then Drake Powell came down the court and he hit a pull-up 3 in like the closing seconds in the game to cut it to 1. And that was a huge shot because the Pelicans got fouled. They then went and hit both free throws to go back up 3. But Michael Porter Jr. ended up getting a pretty decent look, like really far away to tie the game. As the buzzer, sounded, he missed the shot. Or if the Pelicans miss one of those free throws, it's a 2-point game and the Nets have a final possession. So huge clutch shot from Drake, but he's able to play in those moments because the Nets aren't closing with Cam Thomas. And I think that we're kind of getting to the end of the road with Cam Thomas here. As I said, I think that he had some nice moments in this game. I think that he still can be an impactful player in the NBA for some team, but that's going to require him buying into some things that he just hasn't up to this point. The shot selection and the process has to improve a lot, and the defense has to improve. And those are 2 reasons why it seems like, Jordy isn't playing Cam Thomas down the stretch of these games, along with him just not having a future with the team, it seems like. But why doesn't he have a future? It's because of those things. So that's what I saw from MPJ, what I saw from Cam. I do want to touch on Nolan Troy quickly. He struggled in this game. Also, the Nets' upcoming schedule, which does face some pretty difficult matchups, and that will have some significant implications for the Nets in the tank race, given the ground that they're starting to make up. So I'll get into all that when I close out Locked On Nets after a quick break. Guys, the new year is here, and it's the perfect time to reset your routine and refresh your space. If you're spending more time at home, you might as well love how it looks and feels. That's why you should turn to Wayfair. It's a one-stop shop for getting your home back on track. From bedding and mattresses to storage solutions for every room, Wayfair makes it easy to start the year fresh. Wayfair has everything you need for a full home refresh, all in one place. Whether you're updating your living room, organizing your space, or upgrading your work-from-home setup, Wayfair's huge selection makes it easy to find exactly what works for your style and your budget. Guys, I don't do the furniture shopping in my apartment. My girlfriend does that, but she loves Wayfair. She picked up new bedding, new accent pillows, all of that good stuff. It completely changed the room. She can't stop talking about it. She loves that she could find any pieces that match her style without spending a fortune. Shopping is easy, delivery is smooth, and everything arrives exactly as expected. It honestly makes getting back into the routine this new year feel a lot more manageable. So get organized, refreshed, and back on track this new year for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. All right, coming back from the break, closing out today's Locked On Nets podcast, recapping Brooklyn's last-second loss to the New Orleans Pelicans on Wednesday. And I want to touch quickly on Nolan Troy because he was the rookie outside of Drake Powell and Egor Demin who got heavy minutes in this one. Danny Wolf got like 14 or 15 minutes in this one. I think he had a nice game. He had like 5 points, 5 rebounds, no turnovers, 2 of 5 from the field. So that was good to see from Danny, but he didn't do as much. Nolan played more and had some more opportunities on the ball, and he did struggle in this game. He had 5 points with 1 assist and two turnovers, 2 of 8 from the field, and 1 of 5 from 3. And I think that, like, you see some moments from Nolan, like I talked about it in a recent game, in that game against Dallas, the game against Memphis. I think the game is starting to slow down for him in some moments. Like, you're seeing him look a little bit more confident. But then there are moments where you just notice that he's a 19-year-old kid who is, while he has good like height and length for a guard, he's very slight. He's very small. Like, you have to play with a lot of craft at that size in order to be an efficient player. And that's going to take a lot of time for Nolan. So I don't think that this performance was like terrible or anything. I think that it's good to see him get to play through some struggles with that second unit for this team, but he did struggle. Like, he got to the basket on some possessions and then just got kind of swallowed and enveloped in the lane. And that's what we see from Nolan sometimes. That's why him being able to kind of develop that ability to play off 2 feet in the lane, to be able to slow down and do some of those things that we see, a guy like Jalen Brunson, obviously, like, that's the most extreme example. He's one of the best in the league at doing it, but he's just become a master at getting into the lane, being able to slow down, being able to play off 2 feet. And the way that he does that is with a lot of body bumps, with a lot of feel, but like, he has that kind of size and strength that Nolan just doesn't have right now. And Nolan might not ever be that kind of player, but adding some size, adding some strength will go a long way, because he'll get to play in the lane a little bit more comfortably, be able to get to 2 feet, be able to maybe bump some guys off their spot, create separation, generate shots, or generate passing lanes that way. So he just doesn't really have that right now. And then the 3-point shooting has been a major struggle. Like, Nolan looked really good from 3. He had that stretch in the G League where it was like 9 games where he was shooting 51% from 3 on like decent volume. He had a game earlier after he came up to the NBA, I think a couple of weeks ago, where he was 3 of 4 from 3. That was nice to see. But since then, he was 1 of 5 in this game, and he's now 6 of 32 from 3. That's 19% over his last 8 games. So he's not shooting well. And like, that's obviously was a question about him, and that's going to be a big thing for him, because at his size, while he has this blazing speed, while he has some of these abilities, like, I don't think that he's necessarily going to have no shot to be a contributor if he doesn't develop a 3-point shot, because he can get downhill, using his speed and the pick and roll and some of those things. He is a scrappy defender who does have good size and good length. He does have some nice passing ability, but if he's not able to shoot the 3, a lot of defenders are going to go under screens on him. And we've seen that, a lot of teams are already starting to do that, and he's not been really a pull-up 3-point threat whatsoever. So that's going to need to improve, but we all knew that that was a question, and he did have an encouraging 3-point stretch in the G League. So we'll see. We're going to need a bigger sample size. But the 3-point shooting obviously was a question for Nolan. It was a question for a lot of these Nets rookies, and how that kind of bears out for him is going to be somewhat of a barometer of his ability to stick with the Nets and be a contributor in the NBA long term. Last thing I want to close it out on is just talking about the Nets' upcoming schedule, because as I said at the top, with this loss tonight, the Nets are now only 1 win ahead of the New Orleans Pelicans, Sacramento Kings, and Washington Wizards, who are in the 2, 3, 4 spot in the draft lottery standings. And as we record this, let me check. I just had it. As we record this, the Kings are playing the Knicks, and they are up by, they're up by 20 at the end of the third quarter. So barring a major collapse, they're going to win that game, and they'll actually tie the Nets with 11 wins. So the Nets are creeping up towards the top 3 of those draft lottery odds. And that is because after that 7-3 stretch that they had a lot of people talking about the play-in push potentially, I think they've lost now 7 of their last 8 games or 8 of their last 9 games. A lot of close losses in there, obviously. But with that, they're looking like they're kind of back. Like, it was getting kind of shaky with the draft lottery standings and the tank race. And with this recent stretch, they're creeping up towards top 3 odds. And if you look at the upcoming schedule, there are some difficult games. Like, the next 2 games come against the Chicago Bulls on Friday and Sunday. So those games should be pretty winnable, but like, the Bulls aren't a terrible team. I don't think they're good. Those will be winnable games for the Nets. But after that, you look at it, the Nets get the Suns, Knicks, Celtics, Clippers, Suns, Nuggets. So they have some tough games coming up. And then you look beyond that, they get Utah, easier game, and then Pistons, Lakers, Magic. So there's some tough games coming up. The Nets are making up ground, obviously, in the draft lottery standings. And with this upcoming schedule and with the incentives of some of the teams ahead of them, like the Kings are a team that is really bad, but they have not yet committed to like a tank or tearing it down. You look at the New Orleans Pelicans, who the Nets play tonight, they have no incentive to tank. They don't have their draft pick. They're going to be doing everything that they can to win for the rest of the season. So the Wizards look like, they shut down Trae Young until mid-February. Shams had that report today. They're going all in on the tank because they want to keep their top 8 protected pick that they owe to the New York Knicks at all costs. So I'll be kind of surprised if the Nets get ahead of them, but I would not be surprised if the Nets can creep up towards the Pelicans and the Kings, 2 teams that, don't like the Pelicans don't have incentive to tank, and the Kings haven't shown that they're leaning into the tank or like tearing it down and rebuilding yet. So all of that, I think, is a positive development for the Nets. However you feel about the Nets, however you feel about the tank, that's your prerogative. But ultimately, the rookies have been playing as of late, and they've been showing promise, and the Nets have lost some tight games that have been competitive. So I think that is kind of as good as you can hope for this to go in terms of how the Nets are approaching the tank and the rest of the season. I think that the rookies are only going to continue to get more minutes as the year progresses. But that's all I got for you guys on today's episode of Locked On Nets. If you guys do not already, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Nets on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, whether Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you enjoy my content, take a second right now, smash that like button, leave a comment, leave a 5-star review. Anything you could do to engage, it's much appreciated. The Nets got a day off tomorrow, then they're back in action on Friday. I am doing a Fan Take Friday episode, so I have all that and more when I'm back tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.